Hey, book babes. I'm Aubrey,
And I'm Peyton.
and today we are reviewing Yellowface by R.F. Kuang.
Yes. So join us with a cup of coffee as we dive between these paper sheets.
All right.
Let's do it. Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a book review. Oh my goodness. We are so excited to be reviewing Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This was one of our book club reads, and to say we were obsessed is understatement. But just so we're clear here, we are in our NS section, our non-spoiler section. We are just going to be giving overall thoughts about plot points. We're not going to give any spoilers, and of course, we're always going to give you our star rating at the end, so you have an idea if you want to read this book or not. And then after, we'll be in our spoiler section. And if you haven't read the book, that'll be your time to leave. But if you want to be spoiled, just watch the little podcast.
All right. So, jumping into this, the plot of Yellowface is when best-selling author Athena Liu chokes to death on a pancake. Her friend, quote unquote, June sees this as her chance and steals the now girl's manuscript to pass it off as her own. They are both author buddies together, but June isn't quite as successful and kind of, well, she makes some money moves.
Yes. Yeah.
And
New fear unlocked. The whole pancake choking that all
yeah.
shook us to our core.
Well, and the Athena dying from a pancake happens in chapter 1, and
Yes.
and you're kind of introduced to this unreliable narrator, which we'll get into more when we can talk about through the whole thing. But this book is satire. Rebecca wrote it to kind of show like the racism and like the bad things in publishing, but also it's told through the POV of someone who truly believes she's innocent of all crimes and like lives in the ultimate state of Delulu, and it's like a train wreck is how I keep describing it to people, because the more you read, the more you're like, and now what's happening? But like you can't look away. You have to keep turning the pages.
Yes, such a train wreck. A hole that she just keeps digging deeper and deeper and deeper until you're at the end. You're like, where are we going with this? Oh my gosh, yeah, so unreliable.
Yeah.
But this book is funny. It's satirical.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of humor. It's witty. It's funny to read. R.F. Kuang she did an amazing job
So well.
balancing the both of like, hey, this isn't like super racist and wrong, and also like poking fun at some industry insiders and
Yeah.
like things like that. So
Well,
it was funny to read.
and June is just so incredibly realistic of a character. Like, obviously, like the horrible things she's doing and like the racism, but as well as just like sometimes she thinks something that's mean, and I'm like, I think that.
Yeah,
It's
you're
just
like shit.
like general level mean, or like she'll be thinking about social media, and like there's a lot of things that just feel so like the thought you're not supposed to say out loud. And then obviously it also has this other stuff. It's so wild. I don't think I've ever hated and related, and like you relate to her, and then like she takes it too far and
You're
you
like,
hate
okay,
her,
girl.
and then
Yeah.
it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Um,
It's an interesting relationship. At least like everyone had a different point of view.
yeah.
But the relationship you have with June, as far as like, do you feel bad for her? Do you like weirdly want the villain to like
Yeah.
win? And so
Mhm.
I mean, that says a lot about the writing style. And
Yeah.
to be able to convey that, because we have read books where like, no, like you just suck. Like I don't
Mhm.
care about you. When you're able to create that sort of like, oh well, I feel bad for them. Sort
Yeah.
of, and that could just be the people pleaser in me. But people were like, no, she sucks. And I'm like, you're right.
She
Yeah,
sucks, but like you're in her head.
yeah.
But like
But it's hard.
you are her, and yeah, it very much creates a complex relationship. So June basically taking this manuscript and trying to sell it off of her own, And, like, just that concept, I'm like, "Okay, that's a little morally gray, but it's, like, intriguing." That's, like, the type of wrong that I wanna support because it's fiction and it's fun. And then the choices that she makes once she has this because,
The issue, yeah.
I don't know how much is spoilery, but, like, the title of the book is Yellowface. And I think that this is like kind of you don't understand from June's head until a little bit in that June is white and she
Yeah.
is taking this manuscript of a Asian author that talks about like the Chinese laborers in World War II or
2.
one. I don't know. I
Yeah, World
the
War
war
2.
part I was like, oh whatever.
Yeah.
Um and so and like that's talking about like these rights and kind of stealing someone else's voice and then what she does with that. And it's so wild to have all that going on and then the pacing of this book was still just like tight. Like
It
it
was.
was I think this is the first book club book where I sit down to do my section reading and I just read the whole section in one
Yep.
sitting.
Same here.
Very easily read like a fourth of this book in one sitting and I probably could have kept reading further if I'm against people reading ahead in book club. That's my biggest pet peeve. When people are like, the book was so good, I had to finish it. And I was like, wait, now you can't talk about it. Now you
Yeah,
can't
because
participate, which everyone has their right of choice. But
yeah, but
some
it's
bitch
kind
in
of
book
fun.
club at the beginning spoiled something that happened in the book because she read ahead, and that pissed me off. And she doesn't come to book club anymore, so it's all right.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Anyways,
I feel the same way because the coolest thing about a buddy read or a book club, whatever you're doing, is you have to make yourself stop.
yeah,
I remember reading lessons in chemistry, and it ended on a very pivotal, sad point. At week 1 or 2 of reading, and I was like, I had to stop. But
yeah.
it's fun then because then you get to go
Mhm.
and be like freaking out versus like just reading on. And that's why I read like 3 books at the same time because I'll just go to the next one. But anyways, yes, this is just like the pacing. Everything Aubrey just said, I 100% agree with. It's been a while since I sit down to do a reading and just read it all.
Yeah,
So such a good book. So with that being said, I think star ratings.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
I forget what you rated this. You know what I rated this because
This
you
is
just
a
like to
five
post.
star.
Okay, same.
5 star. Yeah,
5 star.
yeah.
Great book.
It's so good, and I love Rebecca, and I follow her on Instagram, and she's amazing. She is also the author for our fantasy girls out there of Babel, which, if anyone has read, you have done a literary work. You have put in the work if you have read that book. I tried to get Jacob to read it, and he like couldn't because it's so dense and like it's amazing, but it is so dense. It's a fantasy book set in Oxford, but there's like a magic system, and it's very complex. It deals with language and culture, and again, like what stealing culture, obviously like Rebecca has her favorite themes that should be written about, and so it was so wild to me going from reading Babel as my first book by her to Yellowface and like the utter like shift
Uh
in
huh.
pacing and narrative but still having very similar like themes and messaging was
Oh
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And even in the book, it's funny. She like pokes fun at like that type of
Yeah,
writing style, and
yeah.
it's funny because she is that writer too. So
Mhm.
it is very satirical. Like that's the funny part. So yeah, 5 stars, people. We have another 5 star book this year.
May was so good for me. I know May wasn't as Peyton and I read exactly the same books in May. I did
What
our
was
little
it?
like monthly post on Instagram of like the books we read. We read Yellowface, Funny Story, and Bridgerton, the fourth book,
I have
Pollen's
two
story.
5 stars in there. Two five
You have
stars
two five
actually.
stars, and I had 2 5 stars and a 4 star. I
Yeah,
really just enjoyed.
we slayed
Slayed.
May. All right, now we're going to jump into our spoiler section. So if you do not want any of this book spoiled for you, please leave and then come back after you've read the book. But if you have read the book and or want it spoiled for you, welcome. So as we mentioned, we jump right into the action of this book
Yeah.
in the first chapter, and that is no spoiler. It's just really nice that I love when authors do this. When you just
Mhm.
jump right into the action, you understand right away. There's no backstory. Right, it's nice. The way that
Yes.
she did this was chef's kiss, perfect writing. So yeah, Athena Lou chokes on a pancake, and June says, "Oh, I'm gonna steal her work."
Mhm.
So Athena and her were like kind of becoming friends. Later in the
Yeah.
book, it's revealed that they've known each other for a while, which kind of not. Like, it was honestly really iffy, but it's kind of like the friend you know by like 2 degrees versus like your best
Yeah.
friend. But June made it seem in her head as well that they were best friends.
June had
And
a
they
very
were.
complicated relationship with her because at the beginning she's like, "Oh, like I just show up because she buys me drinks." And then later when she's feeling guilty, she's like, "Oh, but I
Obsessed.
remember all this other stuff." And like it seemed like they were kind of close and then they drifted apart but stayed at that like distant friendship level. And again, June is the Lulu, and so she kind of conflates and changes their relationship depending on how she feels in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And also, let's be clear here. I think it's so funny. In the beginning of the book, June's like, I think she's going to kiss me. And it's, like when you're obsessed with like someone you can't have. Like, I know she
Yeah,
had the hots for her. And
for
she just
sure.
like, and then I don't know, in some
Oh,
way that
and
could have
then
been.
later when she was gonna write the like satire making herself the villain book, she was like, "I'm playing up the romance between us." When like I don't think it doesn't feel like Athena ever felt that way, but
No,
she was just like,
Athena was just drunk.
"Do you like me?"
Yeah, she was just being her sassy self. But yeah, anyway, so she in the beginning of the book, Athena never lets anyone read her manuscripts. I think
Mhm.
does she typewrite them or does she?
Yeah, she has a typewriter. She's like
Okay,
kind of off the wall about her writing process.
yeah, no one reads her work. Hence why June. This was a mastermind idea by June. But Athena, in her drunken state, is like, take this and read this and let me know what you think. So
Yeah.
for June, this was like in kind of like
Mhm.
this is cool. And when someone's like letting you in on the like dark side that no one ever gets to like
Yeah.
see. And so Athena did give her the manuscript, but she didn't give it to her
Well,
to publish.
no. So it's shady in the beginning. Athena in the first chapter, Athena lets June read it, and then June like is like, "This is amazing" in her head, and then says something mean out loud, and is like, "Maybe when I'm sober." And Athena's like, "Yes," but they leave the manuscript in her office
Exactly.
because we
Yep.
find out that
Because
once
June goes
Athena
in.
kicks the bucket, Athena did not give June permission to take this manuscript home. But June kind of distorts in her mind that maybe she did. But we learn later that June went back into the office while once Athena was a corpse in the kitchen
Yep.
and stole the manuscript as well as
And
others, like her
another one.
idea
Yep.
notebook or something.
Yep, because yeah, with that first page that she put in another book, then, but yeah, so Athena was like, "Hey, you should read this," but no,
Yeah.
I don't no, I didn't think I wasn't saying that she like gave it to
Well,
her and said, "Hey, put this in your bag," but
because
she still
some of our book club friends did think that like not like that like it was already in June's bag because she was going to read it when she got home and was sober, and people thought that, oh, like maybe June didn't like intentionally steal it, maybe she just brought it home to read it and then made the decision to steal it once it was already in her
yeah.
belongings.
But
And it,
June does like the way that the writing is. She wants to convey that like, well, she
mhm.
already gave it to me to read, so.
Yeah.
But you
Mhm.
still stole a bitch. So, anyways, that's the beginning. Shit goes crazy. Um, she dies. Athena is dead. Um, and
Dead.
so this starts the trail of the whole unreliable narrator, which was really
Mhm.
fun to read. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know the last time I read a book. that had like an unreliable narrator.
No, I feel like the catch-all for an unreliable narrator is like fucking Catcher in the Rye, which
Yeah.
I hated that book, like a high school English class book. So it was fun seeing it in like a modern.
People say that The Silent Patient, which was very popular a
Mm,
while ago on Book Talk, that has an unreliable narrator. Brittany Broski talks about it all the time. She's like, it's my favorite book. But yeah, apparently that, and that's like a mystery sort of
yeah.
too. So, it was fun. Um, but yeah, it was a whirlwind of a book. So she does make the decision to use the manuscript as her own. Um, and then literally the story catapults, and it's like, oh, the book's published, or like being
Yeah.
published.
Yeah, we
Be-
jump.
yeah, because so now we're like in the publishing world, and now we get the back end of that process and what
Mhm.
she does with the story.
This is so wild because I have a minor in creative writing and I am very like connected in with the literary world. I pay attention to that kind of stuff. So it was I felt very smart at book club being like, I know what an advance is. I know what like some of these literary terms that we use. But June starts she takes the manuscript, she like edits it, she, fine tunes it. Like she took a first draft and made it something that you turn into an editor. Um, and then she just starts making bad decisions. Her the editor she gets picked up by is someone who is known to have like these either sexist or racist like scandals in the past. And her editor's like, "Well, why don't we take out this part? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this?" She the marketing team ask her if she's white or not, and she gets so defensive. Like June has a victim complex for sure. And so she changes her name to Juniper Song, which is technically her name because Song is her middle name, but like obviously she is trying to manipulate readers into thinking that she
She's
is
Asian.
Chinese
Hmm.
because of the contents of the book. She retakes her author pictures to look as racially ambiguous as possible. And while she's doing all these things, which the biggest one is that she turns down a sensitivity reader, which is so stupid because like, white people write about like other people's shit all the time. All
Hmm.
the time. If she would have just gone through a sensitivity reader and she would have just like not been so insecure about the race part of everything, they could have fixed some of the issues. And like I don't think she wouldn't like none of the bad things that happened would have happened if
Yeah.
she would have just accepted the sensitivity reader. Just so wild. And
She's just so insecure and guilty that she's like,
yeah.
well, what do you mean I don't need a sensitivity reader because like I'm part Asian, and and they're like, okay.
Yeah. And
But
this
you
is
needed
where
one.
she gets the book editor's assistant fired because the assistant is like, "Hey, there should be a sensitivity reader. Like this is, like." And June's like, "I did a lot of research. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I don't want to delay the outcome of the book, the publish of the book." And basically the book editor, once the book comes out, left like a 1-star review on the book because of like these race issues. And June contacts the publisher and was like, "Look at this," and got her fired, which is going to come back and bite her in the ass. Which everyone at book club loved because they kept being like, "When is this gonna pop back up again?
Yeah,
Like, let that."
Candace. Yeah, you literally at the end of chapter 5, June says, and though I would never say this out loud about a fellow woman, the industry is tough enough as it is, and I hope I got that bitch fired. And then underneath it, I go, what does Candace know? Because Candace leaves her, a really like 1-star review on the book, and
Yeah.
at this point, which is a huge bullet point we have, is we see the effects of social media on June because
Mm-hmm.
she is like obsessive, and we know a guilty person. They're like always paranoid, right?
Yeah.
This whole
Mm-hmm.
book is just paranoia. Just live in paranoia the whole time.
Oh, yeah, she really reminds me, especially as we get like kind of later, so she starts there's like cancel culture, and like there's people who are rightfully so being like, hey, like there's problems with this book. She's also making bank, like ridiculous bank money,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
apartment living, bestseller, movie deals, that kind of success does this book have. And she, like, have you ever told a lie and you didn't like, you knew it was like a little lie, but like, I don't know, and then you just kind of get caught in it and you start telling it to yourself enough that like you
You
start
believe it.
believing maybe it's
Mhm.
true, and you cannot go back on this lie. That is what has happened to June, and the way she takes this, and she just goes out of her fucking mind. Like, just
Yep.
insane. And like the social media, when people start hating on her, she'll just spend hours just like scrolling through the cycle. And then obviously, like, with or without proof, like we know she's guilty, but like the social media people don't have a ton of proof, which creates such an interesting relationship where like I'm like, ah, the social, like the fact that people will start sending death threats, will start doing all of these things with no proof. Like they just see something and they're just canceling her, and
Yep.
like there's all these issues all existing on the social media space is like wild. But then like you know that she's actually guilty, but like they don't know she's actually guilty. They're just jumping the gun.
They're just jumping the gun, but they're actually right. But they actually
Yeah.
don't know that they're right. But she knows they're right, but is acting like they're not right. It's like
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, between Candace and the social media, and then of course, like we see the behind the scenes of like her team seeing what's happening on social media.
Mhm.
And there was even a point in the book where they're like, June, if you stole this, let us know and we'll
Yeah.
fix it. Like she had
Yeah.
an out, and I think even in her like in her monologue, she's like, I could just say it. But then she's like, no, of course not. It's like, oh
Mhm.
no. But
Ugh.
like it's so hard
Well,
because like I remember being a kid and just like digging deeper into it
uh-huh.
and just being like, I'll write it out, and like it never ends good. It ends with someone in tears. Like you're supposed to learn this lesson as a young kid versus
Mhm.
having multi-million dollar like book deals and like movie deals
Yeah,
and
as like an
like
adult.
stealing someone's trauma basically.
It's so so wild.
Yeah, so our next thing is the journals, and I
Mhm.
wasn't at the last book discussion for this, and I was hoping that you guys talked about the journals. We find out that Athena's mother, like cute Mrs. Lou, she's adorable, by the way, like favorite character in the book. She gets all of Athena's journals, but she just doesn't have the heart to open them. And like she knew that
Yeah.
Athena wrote a lot about her childhood. And then of course, like in the book I underlined, June's like, well, I write a lot about my childhood too. It's like, no, you really don't. But it's all right.
Girl, stop.
You're just trying to show
Yeah.
off.
Uh that was so weird because like clearly they talk about how Athena almost like exploited her family trauma to write
Yeah.
books. And then we see that Athena did that with like everyone, and she would go to museums or functions specifically to like get the juiciest bits of a story out to write about, which is kind of I did enjoy that like it made Athena, she wasn't just like this perfect like
No.
Mary Sue that died type thing. Like she was also a complex human being, which I liked. But like her mom was terrified of what she could have written in those journals. Like
Yeah.
that's the only reason June was able to manipulate her mom to not release these journals to the public, was because she was like, what do you think might be in there? Which is so like interesting.
It's
And
like double manipulative and like not
yeah,
okay. It's like, yeah, what do you actually think is in there? Like cover yourself, but also I'm covering myself, so I'm gonna manipulate
yeah.
you because you manipulated her. And it's like, oh my gosh,
Well,
like June
and like
was a mastermind, but like not in a good way.
in a good way. And then June's book that she comes out, the next, the witch one, explores her relationship with her mother. And that's when she's on the phone with the mom for the like the last time I think we see the mom. And the mom was like, And June was like, "I'm sorry, I did take this." And at this point in the book, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but just to cover the relationship with the
Yeah.
mom, everyone that's like close with June understands that she absolutely sold this manuscript. Like no one's going to say it out loud because they want to protect her, because they want to get their bank. And I think the mom just like is done with it. She just wants to
Yeah.
distance herself. Like she's like, my daughter died 2 years ago. I don't have time for this. But June's like, nothing from the witch book, like besides that first paragraph, was Athena's. And Athena's mom was like, "Yeah, I know because she'd never talk about me that way." Which is so interesting. I just like this idea that like June clearly does not like her mother and has a bad relationship with her mother. And that's what she wrote about. And so
Yeah.
and Athena's mom's like, "Oh, like Athena wouldn't have seen me that way, how June sees her mom." But Athena's mom does think that like does know how Athena would have seen her because that's what she's terrified to uncover with these journals. And that was a satisfying enough conclusion for me with the
For
mom and the journals. But I
okay.
know our book club girlies were so pissed that the journals didn't come further into light.
Yeah, I do think that the journals were a perfect opportunity. It's so hard. So like from a writer's perspective, there is a lot of trauma in those journals, and maybe it's the mother's like cross to bear that she has to deal with the
Hmm.
guilt of maybe what she did to Athena, and like that's kind of like her payback. But of course,
Yeah.
like you want all of the hot tea to come out in the journals, and like like declassified like journals that come out years
Yeah.
later that like convict someone, and it's like that would be like so crazy of a plot, and then just to have like I don't know, it was a really like simple solution which we all saw coming. And I think Rebecca knowing like writing it kind of knew. But back to like the idea of guilt,
Hmm.
because one of the bullet points I have, like, were we sympathetic at all? Some girls in the book club were, some people weren't. I mean, at
Hmm.
one point, she she's at that meeting
Oh.
with the I think it was like a Chinese
Yeah, she went to the like Chinese book club or something and she did a reading for them.
yeah, and
And June
this
thought she
old
was, oh,
the
that
it's
was the
oh,
worst.
this was hard because old people older people aren't really on social media, and so
Yeah,
and
so
also
they
they're
didn't.
this goes into how like just like boomers and stuff are like so trusting.
Mhm.
And so this like old guy comes up to her and says, "You can tell them our story, make sure they remember us." And it's like, oh, you like, okay. And then this is like where I saw like, oh my god, she's really guilty. Am I sympathizing with her because she's like coming to these conclusions, and like people do make mistakes. I mean, like obviously by the end you're like, oh girly, I don't know, it's hard. But anyways, she says, for the first time since I submitted the manuscript, I feel a deep wash of shame. This isn't
Yeah.
my history, my heritage. This isn't my community. I'm an outsider basking in their love under false pretenses. It should be Athena sitting here smiling with these people, signing books, and listening to the stories of her elders. And then I said it's easy to hide behind a pen, but when you have to come face to face with
Yeah.
that crowd that you are
Mhm.
writing to, shit changes. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. This kind of made me feel like sad for her. I think I'm just sad.
Wow, that's the time that I like was the most mad at her.
Oh, I'm mad, but I'm sad. Like
But
my heart breaks that she did
yeah,
this
cuz
to
you
herself.
know that that's the most uncomfortable section because it's the only time she expresses guilt.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
the only time besides like feeling bad that like, oh, if things turn out poorly, like it'll hurt herself. This is the only time she feels guilty about what she's done for the community that she's affecting. And my secondhand embarrassment
Yes.
that
Yeah.
the whole like the second she got in the car and that woman picked her up and she had to say I'm white. I It was so hard to read those pages and
It's
I
cringy.
can't
It's
stand I
cringy. Yeah.
yeah, like even fucking watching Bridgerton when Penelope's trying to like flirt with the lords and doing a bad job in the TV show, I had to pause like 5 times because I do not do well with secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah.
That scene killed me, killed me.
Yeah, it's so rough. And so even so yeah, so it's hard. Even at the end, this is like a toxic quality of myself, I think. Because I just like want everyone like a redemption arc, but I don't want a
Yeah.
redemption arc, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
she deserves what everything she gets, but also like when you're living in someone's head, and this is the point of it all. This
Uh-huh.
is the point Rebecca or of Kuang is trying to make, is that like yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? But also I don't really think, as a white person reading this book, I
Mhm.
have a say. Because
Yeah.
I think if this was written like vice versa, like it's different. And I don't have those perspectives of like, someone said in the book, like, keep Asian heritage and stories out of your mouth. There's no reason why a white woman should
Yeah.
be writing about this. And
Mhm.
we talked, there's a book that we were talking about that like there's just a right way to do it.
Yeah.
Like coming from someone who like has a doctorate in like Chinese labor camp studies, or like even like German history or something, where you like actually have the years and integrity behind it and the studies, sure, fine. It's going to read more like
Mhm.
a textbook, but when you're kind of like making them seem like your own stories, like that's also where by the end,
Yeah.
like she had no redeeming qualities to me. And like it also kind of put me in my spot of like, yeah, don't feel guilty for her, Peyton. Like,
I know.
stop.
Yeah, I think the most harmful like mindset that like was pushed out on this is in dealing with that is when June was speaking with her little Karen chicks, her other
Oh my
authors.
gosh, I can't fucking stand
Um
them.
and they were like they felt righteous about telling that story because they were like, "Oh, we as white people must take up the mantle of telling these stories because if we don't, no one will ever hear them." And that's where it's like the line is like so fucking drawn because it's like, no,
Chill.
so many people want to tell their own stories from their own perspective. But there is this idea in especially publishing where they're like, okay, we want to tell a diverse story about someone who's Chinese. Sure. They'll have one slot for that. And then if
Yes,
another
yep.
Chinese author is like, hey, I have a story about my heritage, they'll be like, oh, we have already filled the diversity requirement because this white bitch
Is
wrote
doing
about
it for it.
Chinese people. And like
Uh-huh.
all of those, like there's so many things that are wrong with that. But I think what I've learned about this in like ethics class and for creative writing is like you writers should work to like it's a good thing to have diversity in your book. It is not a good thing to tell someone else's story. So we brought up Taylor Jenkins Reid, who isn't gay, but will write about queer characters. But I think the line there would be have queer characters, don't make the point of your book being
About.
someone's coming out story.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that's not your story. You can have queer characters, but don't make the message and the main point of your book be like someone's story.
I love that R.F. Kuang wrote this, and knowing her
Mhm.
background and also the books that she has like written, and what the underlying like hard truth meaning of those are too. Like it's this is just like the perfect fit, and I'm so happy that this book blew up for that reason, so people from
Yeah.
all cultures and all races can read it, and kind of either be put in their place and or also see a
Mhm.
different perspective. But yeah, going to the social media and cancel culture and her little Karen friends and how they're
That's
little
when
and
I felt most sympathetic for her was when her friends stopped texting her back because they were rallying for her for
yeah.
every mistake. And then once it became a little too public and it might hurt their reputations, once it wasn't private anymore, they wouldn't excuse her bad behavior. And I was like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, and it's so funny because we should bring in here so we're all up to speed, because I don't think
yeah.
we freaking mentioned this yet, is she is being kind of like antagonized by Athena Lu's ghost
Ghost?
on
Yes.
Twitter.
My goodness.
We were like, who is it? Who is it? We all thought it was Candace. This is
I
where
feel
I
like
had. Why
go
did you have something? Because I feel like this is where sometimes in books this could have been an ick for me. Because
Oh.
I was not expecting it, but I also think a good writer will be. I want it to be like, oh, not a who's that, you know?
Yeah, well, I will say so I know what you're gonna say. To me,
Yeah,
this felt like an A situation, like Pretty Little Liars,
yeah.
especially the idea of, like, the passing of the mantle, because the first A, the first, like, Athena's ghost, that was annoying.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
So it was Athena's ex-boyfriend.
that we
Was
had
the
no knowledge of.
that's where my ick was, where I'm like, well, I don't even
Mm,
know who this
yes.
maybe in book club we talked about like maybe it was mentioned in like one sentence, but
Mhm.
it was like not fulfilling or enticing or exciting. Now,
Yeah.
with that being said, that washes over very fast, like in a
Mhm.
chapter, and then something else resurfaces, and that is where it's good.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like,
It's
yes,
redeeming.
the fact that at first it was Greg doesn't feel satisfying because you don't know who that person is. And, like, she knew immediately. She was like, "Oh, I know the area code. I know who this is." And, like, it was kinda like June having knowledge that we didn't have, and it's like,
That
but we're
sucks.
in your head.
Yeah.
But I think the point of that was because when that mantle gets passed, and so the first time you're like, "Oh, Athena's loose goose has to be Candace, has to be circling
Yeah.
back. It has to be this
That's true,
Chekhov's
that's
gun
true.
situation." And then it's not, and you're disappointed. That way, when we get to the end, we're like, "Oh shit, it is Candace now." Like she did pick up she is A now, which is why I
Yeah,
keep going
which
back to that.
which happens in Pretty Little Liars. Like it's A is one
Yeah.
person, it gets passed, and it is
Mhm.
funny how like we all automatically like I see like the ex boyfriend. Is his name's Craig?
Yeah, Craig or Greg, something like that.
Okay, whatever. The ex boyfriend. Um, we immediately are like, villain, how could you do this to June? But like also we should be like, good for you for like protecting. But he
Yeah.
also was an interesting feller. Like his life was kind of falling apart. And like it's
Mhm.
funny when she like attacks him again, she's like, you need to
Yeah.
stop. Because she like reverse blackmails him. And like
Yeah.
it's insane. He's like, dude, like just leave me out of this. Like it's not me. And like he's like really down on his luck now and like
Mhm.
is not interested. So it's funny to see like just over a couple chapters
Yeah.
him be this like, I have all this tea on you, to be like, no, just leave me alone. Like you're
Yeah, and
ruining
then
my
he,
life.
like, was almost her friend. Like, he showed up to the coffee date, the second one, like, knowing it wasn't him, and just to be like, "I got your back, girl."
And then he becomes like a sympathizer. It's like
Yeah.
insane. Um so
Which
yeah, but let's be clear here. June gets her fair share of shit this whole book. From the panel that I have down here,
oh,
she did the panel of the authors, and
she shouldn't have showed up.
I've been in a situation where like I don't know how to deal with this, where someone like
Mhm.
calls you out in front of everyone and you're like, are we gonna do this right now? Like
Yeah.
when that girl
Oh,
corrects her that she's like, this is how you say my name. The amount of like anxiety I felt when she's like,
yeah.
my name is pronounced Eileen or
Well, and
Eileen. And she's like, she deserved that. But also the amount of anxiety I felt to be like, okay, now every time I
well,
say your name, I'm going to be like, I.
and in that situation, I would say I don't think June was in the wrong for that
No,
specific thing
absolutely not.
because she said pronounced it the way that the host, the moderator for the panel said it,
Yep.
who was also a white woman. Like obviously the panelist was rightfully angry at her for a different thing and chose this as like she kind of like played this card of her pronouncing the name wrong just to start harping on her. But it's like June pronounced it the way that the person who was in charge of prepping the questions and knowing how to pronounce the person's name pronounced it. Like, ugh.
Yeah. So basically, from at this point in the book, and overall, the notes I have down and we talked about a book club is June
Mhm.
is just very insecure, super sensitive. Super
Super
sensitive.
sensitive.
And then she creates this fake identity, of course, for herself. And I was curious to see how this was going to change her. And by the end of the book, which we talked about, is that jealousy, insecurity, and
Mhm.
sensitivity. After writing another book and stealing more of Athena's work, she gets confronted. And at this point, this is like the either one of the two ways I was thinking this book could go. She was going to unalive herself because she couldn't take the stress anymore. But
Mhm.
she's too like selfish to do that.
Yeah.
And like too like in her head, like I'm not guilty. Or she was going to confront this new Athena Lou's ghost.
Mhm.
And that is what she chooses to do. And so she goes to what are they called? What steps are they?
I don't know.
Somewhere on
It
her
has
college
something to do
campus.
with the college campus
Yeah, so
lore.
she goes to her college campus. This is very like
And at this point, June believes that she is actually being haunted by Athena's ghost. Like,
yeah.
June has lost her mind to that extent.
Oh,
She
yes,
fully
that's right.
believes that Athena is like she's seen horrible Photoshop jobs on Instagram and
Yes.
believing that Athena is alive or that Athena has a ghost, that Athena faked her death to write this expose novel on her. Like, she is taking the mental illness to the furthest reaches.
When I tell you that like her mental health is so bad and her like inner
Yeah.
monologue, I literally have written down the inner monologue of this book is fucking fantastic and horrible
Yeah.
because she says like Taylor Swift, I had no intention of becoming a white supremacist Barbie. Obviously, I'm not a Trumper. I voted for Biden. But if these people are hurling money at me, is it so wrong for me to accept? Should we not
Yeah.
celebrate scamming cash from racist rednecks whenever we get the chance?
Oh my god.
It's like, girl, you don't get it.
Girl.
You don't get it. I don't care how
Well,
liberal and like you think you're doing like the world justice. It's like you are not a good person.
no, and comparing yourself to Taylor Swift, to the Taylor Swift.
Like, but just like that whole thing of like, you know, like what I'm like
Yeah.
actually helping society and like I'm getting back at
Mhm.
the conservatives because they're buying my books and the because these like very pro like radical conservatives like
Yeah.
end up loving her book and like buying it and
Well, yeah, they're buying her book because they found out that it was a white woman who stole this manuscript from a Chinese woman, and they're like, "We support your wrong.
we
You have every
support
right to do
white
this."
people trashing other people's cultures. It's like the effect and the balls R.F. Kuang had to just like and the way in which she wrote that, like Taylor
Yeah.
Swift had no intention and I voted for Biden.
Yeah. Oh my god. Which I also think so June shows up to the steps and
Yeah.
obviously it finds out that she's getting blackmailed now by Candace, who is going to write this big expose about everything that went down. All of this, like, the racism is second par in all of these characters' minds to the money and fame. Like,
Yes.
Candace is doing this first and foremost because she wants to become she wants the check,
Yep.
because she wants the fame that
But
comes
not
with
because it's
releasing
right.
something like this, not because it's right. That's exactly why Greg was blackmailing her.
Yeah.
That's exactly why, like all of June's actions, all of her publisher's actions, like by the end, her editor was like literally like wink wink, you know you work better from an outline. Like,
Yeah, like they all know, but they're in
they
it for the
all
money.
know,
It's
and it's
fucked.
all about the money and fame. It's so corrupt and horrible and hilarious. Like the Brett being like, "We know you work better from an outline."
It's like, oh, like this is embarrassing. Like it is
Oh
embarrassing
yeah.
the publishing industry. And R.F. Kuang had some fucking like vendettas.
Yes.
He's like,
She
I have something to say.
I have something to say. Her marketing for this book was like, uh, the publishing in like you can't publish with the publishing industry to expose the corruption of the publishing industry, and she's like, "Watch me."
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
the
how did
whole
you
like
feel about the ending?
The ending, oh my gosh.
The very, very ending, she wakes up in the hospital, and and June's decision of this little competition they're in now.
Oh yeah, so June is like, I'm gonna spin it. She's like, of course. She
I'm gonna
literally
make money
almost
off
breaks
this.
her neck and dies and learns absolutely nothing.
No, no lesson learned.
No. Um the book also like ended very abruptly.
Yeah, I think it ended ambiguous
Yeah.
because you don't know. I really enjoyed that because the whole time we're reading this book, everyone's like, what's going to happen to June in the end? Is she going to get punished for these consequences, or is she going to get away with it because she is the white woman? And that's kind of like the point to like show that these people are always getting away with it. And so the fact that Rebecca ended it in which you don't know. Like her new book might pay off and it might happen exactly as her Delulu Dreams believes,
Yep.
or Candace's book will come out and like no one will even pick up this book that June writes. Like you
Yep.
have to kind of decide for yourself, is she going to get away with it?
And the fact that it ends and this will become in time my story once again. Girl, it never was your story. Like, just okay, girl, make it all about you. Like, it's fine. I think it shows that like no matter how much some people hit their head, they will never learn.
Yeah.
And I think this isn't supposed to be looked at as looking at June. I think this is supposed to be us looking at the system.
Yeah,
That
for
no
sure.
matter how many times we only have one slot open for, you know, a cultural, story to be told, but then we're gonna, but there's actually five, but we're gonna give the other four to a white author, or vice versa,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
may be. It never changes. Like the cycle is just gonna continue, and you're gonna wake up 4 days later in the hospital, and you should just hang your head low, retire, and do like odds and end jobs to just keep
Hmm.
them your penthouse apartment for the rest of your life. Or we could be even more corrupt and just keep digging deeper once again for the money. This book
For the
ends with
money.
the money and getting back at someone versus being
Mhm.
like, you know what? I changed.
Yeah.
Let me just stick to my
Mhm.
own path, and
Like,
who knows what could happen. But
even the anti-hero or straight up hero or villain, whatever Candace is, depending on whose perspective you're looking at,
yeah,
she might have started being like, "Oh, hey, the last front, the initial book, this feels like wrong and a little racist." She ended for the check,
yeah,
for her own, like, to push her own, and even she was like, at the last one, she was like, "I'm not Chinese. I can't do the sensitivity read." But now she's like, I'm Asian, so I am qualified to write this book
it's
and catch
disgusting.
these lies.
Yeah, so by the end of the book, like, it's funny in a fantasy reader's head. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
are they gonna have a redemption arc or something? No, this is real life, bitch, and this is fucked up, and this is not
Yeah.
okay. And like, I hope nothing good happens to her. And I hope nothing good happens to Candace either, because she was not in it for the good. Um, I hope that they all have a come to Jesus moment, which apparently that was supposed to be June's moment, but she didn't.
But she
Um,
missed it. She
she
missed
missed
it.
it. She missed
She
it.
actually just contemplated murder. She
Yeah,
was like,
she's like,
"Should I kill Candace
what
right
if I
now?"
kill Candace too? She's like, I murdered Athena, basically. So, um, yeah. Yeah. So basically, the
Wild.
publishing industry never will learn. People will never
Mhm.
learn, and this
People
book
suck.
was wild. I
Wild.
am very happy with the conversations it opened,
Yeah.
wide and broadly. As we just said, like we can look at this as a story and June's story and what that means for her, or we can look at it as a whole, as what are readers' purposes, like
Mhm.
what is their platform, and also, what is the bigger story here? And the bigger story here is that this is about the publishing industry.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
crazy book. If you are a book reader,
It's
if you love anything writing, um, great short, fast paced read. I
mhm.
am so happy. And even the blurbs on the back, like I'm looking, like we have Constance Wu from Crazy Rich Asians. We have Olivia Blake. Like it is it's great.
Yeah.
It's great, guys. It's
Ugh.
great.
This is a great book. It makes me want to read Poppy Wars so bad, which
Yeah.
is uh Rebecca's original like high epic fantasy trilogy. I've heard it's a little gruesome, but I've also heard it's like gruesome to the point that like Game of Thrones is gruesome.
Yeah.
And I want to read it. I just have to like psych myself up to it because I don't always do well with blood.
That's like 2020 book talk was like the Poppy War.
Yeah.
I read this for Asian Heritage Month, which was
Yes.
May. So we're just getting through all the colors of the rainbow. So and of course, as always, I have to do it. Like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Instagram. We started a new TikTok, so if you can't find us,
Yes.
hardcover podcast on everything. So go give us a follow. We love talking to you all over there.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us and happy reading.